Hello, and welcome to Play of the Game, the limited podcast where we talk about the fact that we're actually going to play some games this weekend.
Something like that.
Woohoo.
I'm Ryan.
I'm Jason.
I'm Mora.
Whoa.
Mora is my roommate. She's appeared with me on some set reviews in the past. I bet most of you probably know her, but if not, it's Mora. So, the reason that this looks a little bit different from most of your typical episodes is that we are not going to be talking about a gameplay spot this week. Instead, we're going to be previewing the Team Sealed tournament in Las Vegas that we are traveling to this weekend.
Previewing's a weird word, I guess, but we're just gonna talk about Team Sealed.
We're going to talk about Team Sealed.
Because we like Team Sealed. Woo! Team Sealed's great.
There's no real anything else to get into. We can just kind of get started talking about Team Sealed, the best limited format in my humble opinion.
Yeah.
Why is Team Sealed so great?
Well, okay, so my take on Team Sealed, why Team Sealed is so great, is that Sealed as a format would be great if you actually forced everyone. It would be a lot more interesting than how most people play it if you actually forced everyone to build 1.5 decks out of their sealed pool. Obviously, that's not a statement that makes any sense in reality, but if you scale it up to Team Sealed, you're building 3 decks out of 12 packs, which is twice as much as how much you get from Sealed. So you're basically doing that. It's a lot more interesting when you are trying to, figure out how to find multiple different centers of power in your pool, rather than just saying I'm playing all of the best cards.
Yeah. No, I really love Team Sealed. It's just a creative deck building exercise. It really pushes what you learn through normal sealed to the limit of what actually makes a good coherent deck. You can't just push all your power into one deck. You need to figure out how to build 3 decks that can win matches of Magic and balance that out to actually do well in a tournament. And that to me is a very fun creative endeavor.
Also, you get to play with your friends.
Yeah. No, that is a huge plus as well. So much of Magic is solo, and it's there's a lot of pretense that goes into building a testing team or something where you're still going to end up being competitors against each other, but this is a process where we're all maximally invested in each other's success, which is rare in a one-on-one game like Magic.
Yeah, Magic is weird. I've kind of tried to explain this to my family before because they often get confused. So it's an individual tournament, but you're preparing with a team. How does that work? Everyone always seems extremely confused at this. I explain it pretty clearly. It's an individual sport. You compete as an individual, but it makes more sense to work with a team. And that seems pretty obvious when you're inside of Magic, but this is one of the actual events where you literally are competing as a team, and I think that's really cool. It's sort of almost to me more true to the process of preparing for a tournament where everyone is sharing information and trying to build each other up and build our collective understanding of the format, and you get to actually do that in a way that is rewarded based on everyone's collective understanding, which I find very awesome. I think one of my other favorite things about Team Sealed 2 is just that it's very holistic in the skills that it rewards. You always have stuff to be thinking about. You have to be a very good deck builder. You have to work with what you have as, normal kind of course of limited, but it also tests building more coherent, more streamlined decks because you have more cards to work with. And obviously gameplay is super important, and not just gameplay, but communication between people, which is not normally a skill tested in Magic tournaments, but you have to figure out what questions to ask your teammates, what questions to figure out on your own. When you finish your match, you can go help a teammate, but you don't want to overly help and kind of be two cooks in the kitchen, too many cooks, kind of thing. It's just when you're playing a day of Team Sealed, especially high stakes Team Sealed at one of these spotlights or Grand Prix, you literally always have something to be thinking about, whether that is playing your own match, thinking about maybe how you sideboard in your deck, because often pools will have very large sideboards for certain decks and maybe transformational decks, whether it's helping your teammate play or whether it's figuring out how to get food in between rounds for your teammates if you finish your match early or something like that. So it's just super demanding and super rewarding of being thoughtful at every point in the day, and I love that. I think it's just really, really fun where it's almost like it's full magic to me, basically.
And it is, like, because of all of that, very skill testing and very rewarding for putting a lot of work in to solve these problems.
Yes.
Which is very satisfying.
Absolutely. So, yeah, I mean, one thing I say a lot about Team Sealed is that, like, more than most Magic, which most Magic does reward this, but it heavily rewards over-preparing, or preparing way, way, way more than other people.
What would you say over-preparing is, and how have we been doing it?
We've opened many Team Sealed pools, and we'll continue to open many Team Sealed pools.
And, you know,
like,
maybe we don't end up doing
10
well
or
this
11
weekend.
at this point in the past few days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we hit, like, 11 or 12. I think we're at... No, I think we've done, like, 7 or 8. I don't think we've hit 10 yet.
Okay.
And, you know, maybe we don't do well this weekend and all of that prep, quote-unquote, was for nothing. But, like, I don't actually feel that way. I think the
We're gonna
process
win.
of preparing... Well, yeah, obviously we're going to win.
Yeah.
But beyond that, even if we don't win, the process of preparing is super fun, and
Yes.
you get to do it with people, and it's just, like, the best thing. And I do actually think this is a format that heavily rewards skill, because you're playing 3 matches at once instead of 1, and so that just tends to reduce variance. Historically, the best, you know, the pro teams do extremely, extremely, extremely well at Team Sealed tournaments, so we're hoping to compete with those other really strong teams and hopefully, you know, defeat them. So yeah, do we want to talk about, like, we're kind of starting from the super high abstract level of, like, what is Team Sealed, why do we love it? I guess we should probably say exactly what it is. You open 12 packs among the 3 people.
I guess
You
not
build 3
everyone
decks.
knows what Team
Yeah,
Yeah,
Sealed
we
is.
probably should have led with that. But it's fine. I'm sure most people listening to this podcast know. You start with 12 packs, you build 3 decks from those 12 packs. That's your, like, big sealed pool. 12 packs doesn't sound like a lot because it's just twice as large as a normal sealed pool. Believe me, it's a lot. You get to build really strong decks.
Yes.
And so this weekend, it's going to be the new Marvel Superheroes set. Yay! And we're going to be building decks and playing them and trying to make it to day 2. And then on day 2, you open a different pool,
Yes,
right? You
correct.
compete with that, and you try to get to the top 4.
It's a
teams.
cut to top 4 for team draft.
Team
I think
draft,
like
which is
there's
the real
2
reward.
team drafts. Yeah.
Yeah.
I want a draft. Who cares about anything else?
Wait,
I want a
okay.
draft.
I enjoy Team Sealed too.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, I love Team Sealed. I want a draft. Have you considered that?
But I haven't prepared for draft.
But I don't plan on it. Have you considered that Team Sealed plus draft is better than Team Sealed?
True. What they should do is open and build a Team Sealed pool like 3 or 4 rounds, and then do a team draft, and then do it, and then repeat that like 3 times.
I'm sure this wouldn't take infinite time and be hell for the judges to run.
I mean, one day we'll get the week-long Pro Tour where every day is a Pro Tour day 1.
That would be very fun.
Nah, we will not get that. In fact,
I would love that.
Anyways,
moving on.
so that's what Team Sealed is.
how do we win?
How do we win?
We should talk about how we're gonna win.
Do you mean like
the
in terms of
strategy.
the tournament structure?
No,
the
I
strategy.
mean in terms of the
okay.
strategy.
Yes, very very good transition, Jason. Well done. So yeah, we're starting more abstract as like what is Team Sealed, why we love it. Now we're going to talk about like in general for the format as a whole, not set specific. What is our strategy? Like how do we try to succeed? Like Jason was saying. So the first thing you do, and probably the most important part of the day in Team Sealed, is the deck build, right?
Yes.
If you don't build your pool well, it's going to be much, much harder for you to win than if you build it correctly. And Team Sealed pools are orders of magnitude more complex than normal Sealed deck, which is already a very skill testing and difficult format.
Well, I have a take, which is I think Team Sealed pools are more an order of magnitude more complex than Sealed deck, like normal Sealed. If you are, if you're not getting into the weeds of normal Sealed, and actually fully maximizing a Sealed pool is only half as hard as fully maximizing a Team Sealed pool. But most people don't fully maximize their normal Sealed pools, and there's less need of fully maximizing your normal Sealed pool than there is of fully maximizing your Team Sealed pool.
Yes.
I think that's fair, yeah. I agree.
The deck building skill is rewarded more in Team Sealed.
Yes.
I think we can agree.
Yes.
So, how do we actually, like, the big thing is there's a ton of information to process when you're opening 12 packs and you have infinity cards to build decks from, and you could build any combination of decks. So the most important part, I think, is like being set as your team on how you process a pool, how you break it down and kind of sort and start narrowing down like which decks to build. So we've done some practice so far. What have we kind of settled on in terms of? But we open the pool. What is our first thing that we're doing?
I mean, the first thing that we've been doing is we pass each person a third of the pool, and we get everything sorted as fast as possible, because we want to have our cards, which are in a random order, not be in a random order in minimal time, because we don't want that actually to take up any of our.
Yeah. And you want to minimize the time spent simply sorting.
I will say, at an actual competitive REL tournament where there's pool registration, probably the pool will be like a somewhat sorted when it's handed back to us.
That's true. Yeah.
So
it's sorted by color, probably.
Yeah.
Which is good.
What we have been doing empirically the past few days in practice is like sorting by color and then pulling out cards that are either like very strong, like we want like draws to various colors or spaces that we actively want to like make sure are included in decks, and also pulling out a pile of interaction. And we haven't been doing that much sorting of like, oh, these are like the stronger cards in this color, these are the weaker cards in this color. Beyond that, I think you could reasonably do that. There's a lot of different kinds of ways of sorting you can do. I personally am a big fan of pulling out the interaction to make its own pile, specifically because like interaction is like generic interaction is not really something that like makes or breaks any kind of deck. Especially in Team Sealed, where sometimes you can get away with playing decks with like very little interaction and just like a pile, like just have a lot of focused synergy cards. That can definitely work.
I mean, I'd say that works in part because a lot of the time, focused synergy cards create interaction from the synergies working together. Like, you'll have cards that just like say, oh, if you do this and this thing, you actually do this interactive thing. And
sometimes, but most of the time, I think what Jason's describing is that the deck can be powerful and proactive enough that you do not need to answer all of your opponent's decks. You don't need to line up your answers to their threats. Instead, you just need to present more material on board than they can deal with.
Also, interaction in my eyes is like somewhat interchangeable in an interesting way, where like you want, most decks will want to play some amount of interaction, but what specific kind of interaction you want to play is something that you normally would want to figure out after you've figured out what your deck's proactive plan is, so that you can fit like the interactive cards like that work best with that proactive plan, right? Like, you know, like your aggro deck, for example, might want to be able to have most of its interaction be able to deal with larger creatures or go face, right? So like something like 2 mana -3/-3 might be slightly worse in your proactive deck than it is in your slower, like more late game deck. Whereas like a 4 mana destroy target creature will be better in your proactive deck than in your slow controlling deck.
So that's something that we've been doing that I think maybe more people should consider when they're sorting pools, is pulling out a pile that is just all of the interaction in the pool and kind of committing to like assigning that interaction to decks later on, instead of using it as like, what is our pull to this color? Oh, well, we have a lot of removal spells in it, so we should probably build a deck that uses these removal spells. Like, maybe you want to sort just like interaction and then everything else and what the everything else wants us to build.
I do also enjoy pulling out fixing as another, because I think the other thing that will determine what you're able to build is what mana fixing you're available to, because you're not limited to just 2 colors, and so knowing exactly what fixtures you have and what flexibility you have lets you like better round out what decks you can build, and I think that's an easy thing to do at the beginning.
Playing a 9/8 mana base is a real cost in Team Sealed.
Yes. Mostly just because the decks are very powerful and stumbling is really heavily punished. Beyond like, okay, pulling out fixing, pulling out interaction, great, we've done that, and we've sorted by color. How the heck do we start?
Well, so you'll often have like very powerful. So generally, the way that you start building decks in Team Sealed, in my experience, is like you will see that you either have some very powerful cards that like either like line up or like maybe it's a 2-color card. Like for example, in this set, like Superhero Civil War, red-white card, right? You see that and you're like, okay, well, I would like to put this in the deck. I mean, obviously you can splash it, but one of the things in Team Sealed is like you actually want to try to avoid splashing as much as you can, because splashing often means sketchier mana, which is
just inherently like every one of the colors in most pools is going to be in some deck. So splashing inherently is I'm not in the colors to play this powerful card, so I'm going to expand into a different color to play that card.
Yeah.
But if that card is already in a color that is in a deck in your pool, it's just this makes splashing less likely.
Yeah, basically, like, if you have a strong card, it is better to play it in a deck where it isn't splashed than it is to play it in a deck where it is splashed.
Yeah,
there's exceptions to this where sometimes, like, let's say you have, you know, again, like this red-white bomb, Superhero Civil War, and you really want to put it in the red-white deck, but you look at your red and white cards, and your red and white cards just don't work together. Like, maybe you could build, like, a blue-white deck splashing red for Superhero Civil War, and that might be better than building the red-white deck. Sometimes also you have bombs which are like powerful cards which specifically work with like the way to make the, like, maybe you have a blue card that works best with your red and green spells, but like the red and green spells are like mostly coherent together, but they also want this blue card. Then you can splash like that if there's like some like synergistic piece.
Yeah, you want like a specific deck building thing. The concept that I have started really liking is thinking about like hooks in a pool, and like you're saying, like I would say Civil War from this format is an example of not a super strong hook because it's so generically powerful. You could splash it, can go in any red-white deck, but if you have something like a multicolor card that does a really powerful thing in one deck, or like a set of cards you see, like you have like, let's say you have like a set mechanic and a bunch of cards that work with the set mechanic, you know that payoff is so powerful, that's a hook for a deck.
You have like 2 copies of Agent Maria Hill, the uncommon 2/1 that like draws cards when you teamwork with her, and then you have a bunch of teamwork spells.
That's also a hook.
What if all of your teamwork spells or most of your teamwork spells are in one specific other color?
Yeah,
that is how you would begin
hook.
saying, I want to build a deck with these 2 colors.
I would describe a hook as a card or a set of cards that draws you to more than one color, or being deep into one color. Like Team Sealed is a deep format where sometimes you also have decks that are near monocolor. That's one way that you both can increase power and consistency, and also just like, mostly just increases power and consistency to be in deep in one color, because then your mana base is better, and you're also like you just have more cohesion.
Yeah. So like higher level, the thing to kind of kickstart your build process is probably you will have some obvious power outlier, either like individual cards or synergies that pull you into one specific color pair. And the biggest like one sentence advice to give is just start by building the most obvious powerful thing first.
Yeah. And you're not always going to end up with that.
That's a good place to start, because it gives you it starts to give you a framework for how to understand the rest of the pool. If you run into problems down the line after building that most powerful thing, where you're like, wow, all the power in our pool is in this one deck, and the other decks would stink if we built this, that informs like, okay, how do we split this up, whatever, but you have to start there.
Yeah, it's very bad to have one deck with a 100% win rate and 2 decks with a 0% win rate, because you will lose every single match.
Yeah,
obviously it's never going to be exactly that, but same idea.
I think it's very important to be very, very willing to kill your babies. Don't get emotionally attached to any one deck.
That sounds very villainous, Mora.
Yes. They call me the villain. No, but yeah, you need to be willing to build and take apart decks pretty quickly, because you don't have much time, and you're not trying to solve for like, oh, this one deck's really cool. You're trying to solve for 3 decks in this space of cards, and you don't have that much time.
Practically, when you're actually building, you'll be 3 of you sitting at a table, and everyone will have one deck in front of them. And I think a lot of Magic players can get very default to this mindset of, I'm building the deck in front of me the best I can, because almost every time in Limited Magic, that's what you're doing.
Yes.
And so if you build a deck that looks really, really strong in front of you, and then someone's like, yeah, but this deck looks weak, and I need like this color to pair with it to make it stronger, and your deck is good enough you could afford to cut that color or whatever, it can be hard sometimes to be like, well, yeah, I will like willingly make this deck that's sitting right in front of me worse. That feels like the wrong decision to make sometimes intuitively, but it is actually the right decision a lot of the time in Team Sealed.
Yeah. Often in Team Sealed, like, you know, if you think of like every deck that you're playing is 2 colors, which is not always true, right? Like sometimes you have close to monocolored decks, as we were talking about. If you're thinking about the fact that like you're gonna have like 3 2-color decks, by definition, since there's only 5 colors in the game, by the pigeonhole principle, so to speak, you will have at least 1 color that's overlapped. And it's always an interesting question to say, like, when you do have these overlaps, like, what cards that could go in either deck, like, where should those cards go, right? Yeah. And you always want to be trying to, like, figure out how to maximize the impact of each card, like, figure out what the context each card, what context would maximize the power of each card, because like if you're going to play the card in a deck no matter what, right, like you will probably want to like put it in the place where it's going to be
want
best.
the overall highest power level.
Yeah.
And so the way to do that is for all the cards that you're going to play no matter what, make them as powerful as you can in their context.
And this is like most I think this is most clear when you're talking about like interaction suites again, right? Like if you have like 2 colors that are like 2 decks that are both playing red, and you have a bunch of red removal spells, right? It's always an interesting question to ask, like, oh, how are you allocating these removal spells, right? Like, you want both decks to get some number, right? But what number that is depends on the deck, depends on how much the other colors in those decks help with removal as well, and like which kinds of removal spells go in which kinds of decks. Also depends on.
Yeah,
what those decks do.
One counterforce against this, though, is also almost always you won't be able to make 3 decks that are power level. There's going to be some sacrifices in the other direction where you have specific packages that make a deck strong, and you can't really strip away from that because then the deck will lose a lot more than the other deck gains.
Yeah. And just to be clear, right, the goal is not to make as even as high like power level decks. The goal is to make overall the most power.
Yeah, you're trying to find the most power within your pool and distribute it as well as you can, and like that's what makes one of the things that make Team Soul so fun. It's like a very delicate balancing act.
But like sometimes the solution will be to make one absurdly freaking busted deck that seems like it can't ever lose, and then 2 decks that are pretty good but not amazing and have a real chance to win every match.
Yeah.
Or that sometimes is the correct way to assign power in your pool.
Also, sometimes what you should do is make 2 like strong decks and 1 like weak deck that has a cheesy way of winning games. I love this strategy. I love the strategy of making a deck that like sometimes the shape of pools you have are like. You can let you like concentrate a lot of your power, like raw power in the pool into 2 decks, and have the 3rd deck be trying to like jank out wins on things like, you know, I put an aura on my creature and hope you don't answer it, or like have some small number of protections,
or like get an attack through double strike kill you.
There's a lot of things that you can like cheese out wins in high variance ways. Like if you're going to try to do this thing where you're concentrating power into 2 decks, your 3rd weaker deck should try to be doing high variance things, because when you're behind, when you expect to be losing more, high variance is how you like can steal games.
Well, and there is also just this property of Team Sealed where you don't know which decks across the table you're going to be playing against.
Yeah.
Most Team Sealed decks are very strong limited decks. For people who aren't used to it, it's just the 12 packs and 3 decks is very, very, very good, generally speaking. You can make really strong decks with that amount of cards. And so you should not accept building a deck that is just solid and strong and a normal limited deck that kind of does fair things and hopes it wins the game by doing those fair things. Like, that can be okay if you have a lot of interaction or something and you can answer the powerful cards on the other side. But I think one of the reasons that this strategy Jason is describing works, or like is the best thing to be doing sometimes for like your worst deck, is that it is going to be competing against decks that are much stronger than it on generic card power. And so you need ways to bridge that gap with high variance strategies where if they don't happen to have the removal spell, you just win the game because you put +4/+4 enchantment on a double strike creature and it just ran away with the game.
Yeah.
I wonder what deck you may be referring to that I maybe built recently. But yeah, in general, like, what you really, really, really want to, like, never build in Team Sealed is a deck that is not, like, ending the game quickly, that's just, like, somewhat mid-rangey to controlling, that's just, like okay common power level, right? Like, if all of the decks, if all of the cards in your deck are just, like, you know, decently strong commons, but that's literally just all of the cards in your deck, and you're not aggressive enough to close out the game quickly or something, you're gonna have a really bad time.
Yeah, you're gonna have a pretty awful win rate. Like, the other decks are just going to be so much better than you, and also just, like,
almost every deck is going to have
do.
bombs that overwhelm your commons in terms of
Yes.
power. Yeah. So, okay. So we're talking about kind of how to think about how to get into which decks you're building at the start, which is, like, build the most obvious thing, and then kind of figure out how sort of the cascading, like, then what should you build based on that, and then make adjustments if necessary. And then talking about, like, how to kind of think about which decks are good and which decks are bad and how to structure the power in your pool. Once you kind of have 3 decks and they have a pretty coherent shape, you will probably, as we're saying, decks are really strong in this format, you'll probably have more playables than you need. So how do we like collaborate on making cuts to the decks once we've decided this is probably the set of decks we're building in this pool?
Yeah. I think that it's very important, again, to, like, have each deck have a powerful thing that it's doing, and often there will be a set of cards that is, like, core to the package of making that powerful thing work, right? Like, for example, one of the decks we recently built, one of the pools we recently built had a blue-red deck that was, like, the powerful thing it was doing was it had 2 copies of Fin Fang Foom, and then, like, that's, like, the rare 3/5 flyer that, like, copies spells, copies instant and sorceries that you cast that target artifacts or lands. So then, like, because we had, like, 2 copies of that, and that was, like, a decent part of that deck's power, we wanted to try to keep as many things in as possible that were targeting artifacts, making sure that we, like, had artifacts in play that we could target with those things like that. And then since we wanted to, like, make sure that we had, like, enough density of that synergy package, like, we started shaving on things like removal instead, right? Like, some of the, like, clunkier removal, for example, like a copy of Frozen in Ice, which is a removal spell that does not work with Fin Fang Foom ever, right?
Yeah.
And
we, like, accepted that our deck has a very strong proactive synergy plan and also has access to enough cards like I Am Iron Man, which is kind of a combat trick, but still will interact in, like...
I Am Iron Man being 2 and a blue, target
Yes.
artifact or creature you control becomes a 4/4 flyer until end of turn.
artifact creature
flyer, and you draw a card, and it's an instant.
Yeah, so that card lets you, like, still interact with your opponent's mid-rangey things. Maybe not as directly, but when your proactive strategy is that strong, that sometimes is all you need.
A word that we've been using a lot is coherent. You want all of the cards in every deck you build to be very coherent with the deck's thing that it's doing. And most decks will be doing a specific, powerful thing. It's closer to building constructed decks than limited decks.
I also think that in this format specifically is, like, pretty flush with micro synergies. Specifically, when I say micro synergies, I mean, like, synergies between, like, a small number of cards as opposed to, like, across the whole deck, right? Like, for example, the Fin Fang Foom thing of, like, you know, you have this one card that works with, like, a small number of your cards, or, like, I've seen, like, decks that have, like, a package of 2 copies of the Loki, the uncommon Loki that, like, in red that copies spells, and, like 3 lightning strikes that go with that are easy to copy with it, or something like that, right? Or, like, 2 copies of Hawkeye Young Avenger, which, like, increases damage from non-combat sources you control, and a bunch of burn spells that you can, like, try to burn your opponent out with, right? Like, you'll often have these, like, small packages of, like, synergy, like, small synergy packages, and often it'll be a question of, like, how many different synergy packages do you want to try to fit in your deck? how well do they fit together, and like if you have way too many cards, you might need to like cut one of those synergy packages as a whole while like keeping the other synergy packages intact, right?
Yeah. And there's a couple things about this. Like, one, we kind of glossed over it a little, but you will have to cut strong cards from your decks if they're not very on plan.
That's I have like put Lightning Strike in the sideboard already.
Yeah, that was a close decision that I might have disagreed with, but it's the kind of thing that you end up doing sometimes where you're like, all of my cards are good, these cards are good and on plan, these cards are just good, maybe they're a little better than the other cards that are on plan, but I probably want to cut like the cards that are just generically strong to make my plan be very, very coherent.
Yeah, also it's very good to pay attention to like specifically, you will have too many, like you will often have like one or two decks that have like too many cards, like too many good cards, and all of your cards are good, and you can't just go by the metric of like, oh yeah, well which of these cards has the highest 17 lands game in hand win rate,
which
or whatever.
Luckily for this format we don't even have yet,
well, yeah,
so
yeah.
we don't even need to
well, we'll have it by the weekend technically, but either way, like you can't just go and say like, oh, which of these cards is like in a vacuum objectively stronger, and we're gonna cut the weakest ones, because again you really need to pay attention to the synergies, and also you just need to pay attention to what different roles your cards play in your deck, right? You can't just play like 15 removal spells. I mean, some decks maybe you could if you had like a lot of card draw to go with it, but like
how much card draw can you have if you have 15 removal spells?
Yeah. 15 was obviously an over-exaggerated number, but like you can't just like play a billion removal spells because you know like Lightning Strike is going to be a strong premium common, but you like if once you have enough removal, like you probably will need other cards that do other things in your deck. For example, cheap 2-drops, or like the various synergy, like this set of cards that's like a synergy package, and like you actually do need to have a good balance, right? You can't just like overload on one thing.
And then I think the other thing about these like micro synergies that Jason is talking about is it's pretty important to not go for the wrong ones and build around ones that are just not powerful enough even when they work. So that is part of where there's a deep specific format knowledge can really help, where you have to have played with all of the cards and know this combo, this Splinter Twin, whatever, is actually really good when you pay it off, or okay, when you pay it off, it's as good as any normal Magic deck.
Are we perhaps referring to putting 2 copies of Scarlet Witch in the same deck as 3 copies of Atlantis Attacks?
That was one. I was actually thinking of the 2-drop Agents of Hydra that, like, when it dies, you make a 2/1 Menace villain, and the 3-drop 2/3 lifelink that lets you sacrifice creatures to draw cards. Where, like, okay, you put those 2 cards in your deck, because one says, when I die, the other says sacrifice, and so you combine them to get a reward. But the reward is you spent 5 mana for a 2/1 that drew a card.
Yeah,
that's a common. There's a 4-drop 2/1 flyer that draws a card and puts a land into play when it enters. You have created a like overall package that is worth less than that, which is just not something that is important to go for. Even if the cards say the correct words on them to work together, you sometimes need to be very judicious with which synergy packages are actually worth it and which are just, I guess technically you can do that, but it doesn't actually result in winning games.
Yeah. Like you definitely, this is definitely something that requires some amount of format knowledge, but also you can just like, also some amount of just like card evaluation if you don't have that format knowledge, like just thinking about like what actually happens when you do the synergy. Does it actually win the game, or is it just like kind of nice TM?
Yeah, but having a holistic knowledge of that is one of the reasons why, like Ryan was saying before, over preparing for Team Sealed is very rewarding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a list of cards we have yet to play with, and I would like us to play with those cards. So.
The last couple of things in terms of like the deck building portion of the tournament, which is mostly what we're going to talk about because it's the most important part, but last couple things. So like once you've gotten these tight synergy package decks together, I think it is important even just to make sure that you're doing everything correctly to get the best decks from your pool. Once you've done that, and right as you're about to submit decks, just take a minute or two to do a quick scan and say, okay, would we be able to improve these decks if we swapped 2 of their colors, or swapped one card for another card, or a one little package for another little package or something?
I generally like about halfway through the build process doing quick checks, being like, hey, are there any powerful cards we are not playing, and could we play those cards?
Yes.
Right.
No, generally, the ideal is to have at most like one strong like multicolor card that you couldn't fit in.
Yeah,
you want to use as much of the raw power from your pool as possible, because everyone else is going to have a lot of raw power.
Yeah. The one example of this kind of thing that like we could end up changing last minute is like, let's say we made some judicious cuts from a deck, and then it turns out, oh, this deck is only actually playing like 4 cards of a specific color, and the rest of it is like monocolor in this other color. And we were going to be splashing, 1 card of this other color also. So it's like base monocolor, like 4 cards of one color and 1 card of another color.
Base blue, splash 4 green cards, splash 1 black card.
Exactly. This is the example I was thinking of, where we had that deck, and you could see that, like, okay, maybe instead we build this base black, put in these, like, black 2-drops, and maybe, like, 1 or 2 black removal spells, and only splash 2 out of these 4 green cards. Maybe that's a better deck. It's
and
like a minor change that you can kind of do, like, a quick swap out that doesn't fundamentally change the deck, but does change how you think about building it in terms of the mana base and everything. You want to check for those things.
In that case, I believe it was wrong in the specific case that Ryan is referring to, but like it was good to check that, and also sometimes it's good. You often should make these look at these small changes, especially if they're going to free up cards that you could then throw to other decks. Of like say like if I like swap my splash from color A to color B, then this other deck can maybe take the cards I was splashing and just like play them in a non-splashing sense, and
maybe they fill a hole there.
Yeah, if it doesn't make a huge difference here but makes a huge difference over there, then like that's going to be a positive
net power.
And it kind of goes the other way too, where we were talking about before. You're going to have to cut powerful cards from your deck. Once you cut those cards, you should take a second and be like, could these live somewhere else?
Yeah. Like, if they were good enough to almost get played, maybe they're good somewhere else.
Yeah.
And like again, I just really want to emphasize, like, you really want to be making sure that like all of the cards in your pool are maximized, or like have really good reasons for them not to be. For example, like I was looking at a pool that Mora had like taken a crack at earlier, where Mora had been playing like a blue, like a bunch of like blue cards in a blue-white deck. And specifically there were like 2 copies of the 2 mana 2/3 like common defender artifact that like taps for artifact spells, mana for everything except casting non-artifact spells. That's technically the wording. Yes. And those were kind of not that coherent in the blue-white deck, because there were some artifacts, but the deck was also being fairly aggressive. The defender nature of it was like not great, and like that to some extent that's like kind of fine. Like you don't
do that a lot in normal limited.
Yeah. But I thought that it was better to, instead of building that blue-white deck, instead swap it to a like slower like blue-green deck that could focus more on the powerful green cards and pair white with something else. Specifically just because I didn't want to have those 2/3s that were just not pulling their weight in that deck. And like, maybe sometimes if you have like a bunch of like, blue-white cards and you just really need something to fill your 2-drop slot or something, that's a situation where my choice might not have been correct.
Yeah, but I think the point is that the bar on every single individual card is just that much higher, and like you need to think about the fact that you'll draw your deck in many different permutations, and like the permutation where I drew like the defender 2-drop and a bunch of other dirty things, and just like didn't make the game big enough for my Atlantis attacks, and like it just didn't work coherently, is like a very real portion of how that deck is going to play out, and like you can just like correct for that better when you have access to much more powerful cards.
That's why coherence is the word, I think, that we keep coming back to.
Yes.
Is you want to have every card be coherent with the entire context of the deck, because at every point in the tournament you will be drawing different combinations of cards, and it's very bad to draw combinations of cards that don't work together.
Yes.
This is just like kind of a higher standard for limited than most people are used to, because the decks are more powerful. You have a ton of options for which cards to put in every deck, and so you get to make these choices, and it's really powerful to make that kind of choice where every combination of cards you draw, as long as it's a decent mix of lands and spells, is going to be good and able to win games. Okay, so we have our decks. This will probably be... Oh, yeah.
One more thing. After you build your decks, you assign sideboards to them.
Yes.
So in Team Seal, generally, it's like in normal limited, your entire pool is your sideboard. But in Team Seal, you need to split that pool between the 3 decks and specifically assign them to each of the 3 decks. So like definitely what you should do, obviously, like if one pool is if one color is only being played by one deck in the pool and only possibly being played by that one deck, then obviously give all the cards of that color to that pool sideboard. But sometimes you will have some cases where you can imagine, and this Team Sealed is very complex. You'll probably not have that much time to think about this, but if you do have time to think about it, you can think about whether some decks might want to like have a sideboard pivot that includes a splash in some way, or swaps out the secondary color for a different secondary color, right? Like maybe you have like a different color that has more 2-drops, and if your controlling deck faces off against a very aggressive deck, you might want to side into having more 2-drops which might need to side into like having a different color. That's like a little more advanced of a strategy, but like it's definitely something you can do, right?
The kind of simplest example is just, let's say you decided that a deck is best as a base 2-color deck that just plays a bunch of powerful synergistic cards, but you have a splash option for some removal spells that are a bit clunky, but good to bring in if your opponent is just like a mega bomb deck that just has infinity bombs.
If they're like slow, clunky bombs.
Yeah, and I would say that very much during sideboarding, like the default is just give everyone like the colors that they're the only ones playing, like the card that color, right? And often this will mean you hand them a big stack of cards that most of them like you're like, I feel like I just never would put this in my deck, but you really should pay attention to in sideboarding.
You kind of want to assign
games.
the real sideboard.
Well, kind of. But like
it
it is good to figure out like what the real sideboard is, like Ryan's saying. Like figure out what like is most realistic to bring in, but don't ignore all of the other cards too, because you can just make a lot of sideboarding when you have this much to work with. Just like in regular sealed, you should really be sideboarding in ways that like line up creature sizing better, right? If your opponent is playing a bunch of 3/2s, then your 2-power 2-drops are going to be a lot better than your 1/3s, right? Even if you would rather have those 1/3s, normally as like sometimes it's good to a good enough justification to make that swap, right? Or like if your opponent has a bunch of flyers, you can side in like the red 5-mana 5/5 reach land cycler, which like you generally don't really want to be playing because it's kind of a big idiot that doesn't do anything. But like if your opponent has a bunch of 4-power flyers, like side it in.
Yeah.
And as a last reminder, just make sure to put the basic lands you'll need for sideboarding in your sideboard.
Yeah, you don't want to be like scrambling like, oh, I need to go find some basic lands right now. Like make sure to plan that out.
For one, that gives away to your opponent that you're doing some kind of transformational thing,
Yeah.
but also it's just better to be able to do it quickly.
Yeah, in general, I like to sleeve the cards in my sideboard that are either like I expect to side this in often and not just for like specific creature sizing reasons, and also if I have any like transformational sideboard, sleeve everything in that transformational sideboard along with the basics.
And figure out ahead of time what is the like set of cards you're going to be cutting in that
Yeah.
transformational sideboard so that you can do it.
Yeah, and like this takes time, but thankfully you can continually figure out what your sideboarding plans like, including like in between rounds.
Yeah,
like
and this is what we're talking about, where there is always something to be thinking about.
Yes.
You can figure out how to transformationally sideboard a deck after round 1 when you won, but realized that, oh, maybe I should have done something a little differently in boarding or whatever. Okay, the last thing about like the deck building portion that technically we should probably talk about, but will probably be very short: assigning decks. How do you assign decks in Team Sealed?
roll die.
Roll a die. Doesn't matter. Who cares? If someone has a very strong opinion about why they think a deck works and they want to kind of play it because they feel like they know how to play it to like win or something, okay, give that deck to that person. Otherwise, it literally doesn't matter.
All right, well, I will say
I disagree with that.
Yeah,
I think it doesn't matter for us. I think it matters a lot more if like I don't know, people have a lot more specific, like if they had less time to prepare, like if you've played more with certain kinds of decks and understand their play patterns better, like if you've played with some cards and not others, then you could assign that person something.
let's just say I would not hand CFT a deck that wants to attack.
People have preferences, and it's important to recognize that, but also not over-index on that, because limited decks are all kind of like even in Team Sealed, where we're building closer to constructed, decks are still going to be very flexible in their plans, and like it's just you want to be approaching. If you want to be well prepared, you're going to have this holistic view because you need to be prepared to play anything.
Yeah, my answer of roll a die would be if I for like the three of us.
and I do just think in general, like, assuming that you're all reasonably competent limited players and all reasonably similar skill levels, which I believe will be true for most teams, in general, I think it won't really matter. And if anyone has a strong preference, you can respect that, but you should not spend a lot of time arguing about who's playing which deck.
I mean, yeah, I would also say that like this could be some nuanced things of like, I don't know, I think Jay is probably better at like larger sideboarding swaths than I am, so I want if there was a deck that has more sideboarding options, I might want to give it to Jay instead of myself.
I would say mostly, if you can think of one reason why someone should be playing a deck, give that deck to that person and don't think about it more.
Yes.
Okay, but how should we sit? Who's A, B, and C?
Also, I think pretty silly to worry about, except you probably want either a player who is very willing to help in the middle seat B, or a player who needs a lot of help.
Yeah, like the middle seat is the one that naturally, like, you know, can talk to two people instead of just one more easily. So, you know, either that's they want to like they're the person who is the you want to like be default consulting, or the person who you expect to be consulting other people more.
Yes. Yeah. I will say.
So we're seated right now in the order that we're going to be in the tournament, because we think Jay is pretty good at like turning its attention to a game and giving reasonably good advice on a spot in that game.
Oh, I thought it was because we're helping Jay.
I'm light as a feather. Please carry me.
No, but the other thing I want to mention, because I think it's expressly unimportant, is trying to metagame what deck select people deck selection is going to be based on what seat they're in. People love to say, I've definitely seen people say like, oh, I feel like seat B is going to be playing this kind of deck a lot, and it's like, because they finish the match faster, so they can help people, or they have the hardest deck so people can help them. It's like, there's so many hypotheticals you could generate for that. It immediately loses value. Don't worry about that. People are going to make choices about deck selection roughly at random.
Yes. Agreed.
Like, you can't actually understand, like, they're going to try to be 0 steps, 1 steps, or 2 steps ahead, or just give decks based on, like, the randomness in the pool itself. Like, don't worry about that. That should not be a factor.
But we're telling you right now, if you're in seat B, you're playing against me.
You aren't.
Yeah.
Okay. Other things to know or to talk about like general in-tournament situations. Like, how do we communicate? How do we give advice? Do we kind of consult for like most tricky plays? Do we kind of let each other play
at a reasonable pace?
Yes. I personally, where I've arrived is I think mulligans, and I think mulligans are pretty unanimously agreed, but like that's at the start of a game when there's very little context, especially game 1.
And so it's a very discrete decision.
A very discrete decision that you can like show someone, they can like immediately ingest the information they're given. That's a good spot to consult, because that can also be one of the hardest parts of the game. But once you're in the game, especially in game 2 or 3, you have all this context. The harder the play that you're trying to make, the more likely it is actually like not a good use of time to bring your teammates in, unless they've already been watching the game, which they won't be if they're playing their match. I think a lot of the time, it's very beneficial to not have to consult on plays during a moving game, unless it's like extenuating circumstances or someone else has finished their match and is watching you.
Yeah, like, for example, like, if you're playing a game, right, and you're, like, in, like, turn 5, and you're making a decision about, like, attacking or blocking, right? Probably by then, you already, like, you maybe just, like, subconsciously have a sense of, like, what cards might be in your opponent's hand, like, what exactly...
Did they make a trade on turn 3 that indicated they wanted the game to go long?
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah, things like that. And it's really hard to communicate literally all of that information to someone, to your teammate sitting next to you, like, that you're trying to consult on a decision. And, like, often that kind of thing can be very important, right? Like, on the Play of the Game podcast, we often talk about how there's like so many things that you can think about when it comes to like gameplay decisions, and we often talk about these contexts of like what happened earlier in this game, and those can be very, very informative of like what exactly the right play is. And you don't like just making a decision without having that context is often going to be not like accurate, just not accurate to what you should do.
There's also a few more reasons why you don't want to be consulting on every play. One is just, the thing you were saying about playing at a reasonable pace. It can take a very long time.
These matches can go long, especially later, once someone's finished the match and they can consult. You want to have banked enough time that's not like in the last 5 minutes of the match.
Yes, and also, as everyone knows, on the Play of the Game podcast, we spend 30 minutes talking about a single decision in a game of Magic.
Don't do that!
That is massively illegal in Magic tournaments. You cannot do that. Please do not do that. Please do not hold up the entire convention hall, even if you're in turns and it doesn't matter how long you take, technically.
Please.
Unless you're us, we're planning on, of course, during the Team Seal, pausing the match and recording an episode. Obviously not.
Yeah,
if you play against us, be wary. You might show up on a certain podcast.
No.
That's another reason. And just generally, like, you want people to be confident playing their own games, and the way to do that is to have trust in your teammates that they'll play the games. They might not make every single decision exactly how you would have made it, but their play is going to be coherent, and there's a reason they're your teammate. You trust them. That's it.
The flip side of this is when you do consult.
The flip side of trusting your teammates.
Oh, no. The flip side of like what we've been talking about is when you do consult a teammate, be sure to actually provide a lot of context. Actually tell them here's what happened in these past turns. Don't just say hey, can you look at this and tell me if I should attack here? You should also tell them what happened in the previous turns. If there's anything notable that you can think of that do you have a sense of I think they might have this card in hand for this reason, or in game 1 I saw this set of things, right? Actually give them the information. Don't just say hey, can you look at this one snapshot and tell me what the correct play is here.
The one thing that brings up though is that the point you're making is in order to get proper citizens, you need to communicate a lot of information. And communicating a lot of information, that is something also your opponents will see. And astute opponents will pick up on context of your hand and your game plan and what's in your deck based on even subtle things. Especially as you get to the later rounds and your opponents are competent.
So that's the other thing I was going to bring up in terms of the downsides of asking a lot of questions on certain spots is you almost cannot communicate about the state of the game without giving away something about your mentality and mindset and the state of your hand about that game. So be sure that when you're asking for advice, it's very high impact and it's worth bleeding a little bit of information. Yes. Even the act of asking for advice can leak information.
If you're asking should I attack here? And the attack is something that looks kind of silly, or is maybe something that you might want to bluff attack or something like that. It leaks information to tell your opponent that you're thinking about it and it's a hard enough decision that you want to consult someone.
Now you can leak false information.
This is allowed. 2/2 into 4/4, no tricks in hand.
Should I attack?
Should I attack?
This attack's pretty good here, right?
Yeah.
Make sure not to make. If you are doing that,
don't waste time. Don't waste too much time doing that.
That's not actually if your opponent is competent, they're gonna still just evaluate the factors at hand and understand that you have a chance of bluffing and make that evaluation. So you won't be able to get that much equity out of it. But there are, if you are astute about it, you can maybe find small moments with that. I wouldn't worry too much about it though, unless it's something you already do naturally.
I'm not very good at making those kinds of things, or maybe I'm just saying that so that people listening to this podcast will assume I'm not doing it.
Yeah.
And one thing I will say as a blanket statement that I think we should all follow at the tournament that I'm kind of giving to you guys firsthand now, and maybe I'm feeding false information, whatever, is that if I ask you guys a question, or if one of you guys asks me a question about your game that doesn't make any sense whatsoever based on my hand and what's happening, you should act as if it does make sense.
Yes.
Yeah.
That is an important thing. You shouldn't have your teammate ask you a question. You'd be like, why are you asking that? You don't have anything to do here. It's well, yeah, I'm showing you the lands in my hand and asking
Yeah.
whether I should cast my spell because I want them to think I have a spell. Duh, don't give that away.
Yeah. Don't. When you're being asked a question, don't give away free information.
Yes.
If you are not sure what to say, I think a very safe thing to very quickly
I
say,
don't know.
no matter,
I trust you.
no matter whether it's like you're confused as to what exactly your teammate is asking, then they're making a bluff, or just like you don't feel like you could actually answer this question competently. Just tell them, I trust you. Make your own decision. Sorry, this is like too complex for me to think about right now.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You know?
Alright, so this is from building the decks to playing the matches. That's kind of our theoretical approach to Team Sealed. What about this actual format? What have we been learning in the past couple days when we're building a bunch of pools?
Often you have a white core, a blue core, and maybe a black core, and red and green are kind of like don't have that many like synergy cores and are like more supplemental.
I would say
to those three colors.
White and blue seem to have the highest depth of just like power as well as like synergy hooks.
Yeah.
Black has a lot of synergy hooks,
but
less
not
power.
always power.
Yeah, and then red and green have like just less. Like especially red, I noticed when we first started building and like after our like first 6 pools, we had played with a lot of all the cards except for the red cards. Green cards like provide you like generic stats, and so we've been putting them in decks. But I have also noticed that they don't like have.
They don't create team sealed decks that act as coherent, powerful, proactive decks.
Because they don't have that many synergy hooks, I think.
Right. They're just kind of large creatures.
Yeah, which like have
and
a power
that's
hook.
fine.
Yeah.
Right. But
You will obviously be playing green as a main color in one of your decks in most pools. And
Maybe not most pools, but a good number.
main or secondaries.
I certainly think most pools will have green as one of your 2 main colors in one of your decks. I don't know.
That's like
You don't really not end up using a color in those pools.
Unless it's red.
We have had pools that basically don't play one color, which I think is maybe unusual for this like team sealed format. I think most team sealed formats you end up playing every color in almost every pool. This format we've had like distinctly 2 or 3 out of like the 8, maybe 10 pools that we've built that we've like mostly not even touched a specific color.
Yeah, I mean,
which is a little weird.
Other than like light splashes.
Yeah, but I think that the reason for that is that it's a very monocolor based format in a lot of the synergies, and so you end up building like 3 monocolor decks and then assigning support colors based on like what's left.
Yeah, no, we have even had one weird spot where I feel like we basically only played 3 of our colors.
Which
like it's rare, but like it is important to be able to have that flexible mindset of like first and foremost you want to be playing more colors because in theory that means you're getting more power out of your cards because each color has its own like set of powerful cards, but like it's also important to be able to like kill your babies and be like, no, I've identified that this doesn't actually seem coherent. Like these green idiots aren't actually contributing to any of my game plans, and I have enough cards. Like blue and white are so deep, like you could split both of them in some pools.
Yeah,
and
it's important to kill your babies. Mora, 2026.
Is more the baby that we're killing or the person that's killing babies?
No.
I don't know.
Unclear.
Yeah, and just to be clear, like you will play at least 1 card of every color in almost every pool.
Yes.
Or like a couple cards.
Like
when Mora is saying we almost didn't play 2 of our colors, I think what
like
they mean
splashing.
is like we're splashing. We have like 4 cards of one of
we
the
put
colors
like
in a deck.
2 green cards and like 6 black cards in a pool.
Yeah, that can happen.
Yeah.
Other than that, like what's kind of the format about? I've found it to be very like board presence focused.
Yep.
I think a lot of that is there's some very strong like uncommons and rares that are expensive and maybe don't do anything the turn they come down, but kind of go on to generate value and win the game through that value if you untap with them. And so being ahead on board when those come down can be very important.
Teamwork rewards, board presence.
Because you want to be attacking your opponent so they can't easily tap their creatures.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also
and you want creatures in play to be able to
too.
teamwork.
Yeah.
Obviously, like there's some equipment synergies which like need you to have board presence.
And in general, just equipment seem pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like you want ways to turn your creatures into relevant bodies later.
I have been
Simply
surprisingly okay with Vibranium Energy Daggers, a card that I expected to be like kind of unplayable.
That's the 1 mana value equipment, 1 colorless that equips for 3 and gives the creature +2/+2.
Yeah.
And it's indestructible.
The equipment
is
itself,
indestructible.
which is always a danger to mention when you're talking about the card, because you have to be very specific when you say
I
that.
love my Dark Steel
Anyway.
axe.
Yeah.
Or something.
Yeah. No.
Yeah. What else? What else about the format? There's not that much general you can say, because we haven't really found yes, certain colors
It's
are more
very
powerful,
micro synergy.
but
there are a lot of-
that's the other thing. There's
Yeah,
combos. That
There's
you
a
can
bunch
build
of
in
random
models.
cards because of its nature as a Marvel Universes Beyond set. It's kind of a it's a. I don't quite want to call it an incoherent mess of a set. But
Those words have been said now.
It's too late.
but there's a lot of cards that do like random things that like don't neatly tie into any other synergy in the set, but like you can support them with like random cards, and it does make for a cooler sealed experience in some ways. I think there is some cost to it from a design perspective, but whatever. That it's how the format is. Yeah.
Yeah.
You got to play the format you're given, which is very much true about Limited, and I think like just generally in Magic, you want to kind of, as the joke is, I love Modern because I'm preparing for a Modern Pro Tour. We love Marvel superheroes sealed and limited.
Hey, incoherent mess, somewhat positive.
Okay. Fair enough. Fair enough. No, I mean, I have actually been having a really good time building pools and playing decks in this format, because I think there is a lot of granular stuff that you get to learn about specific cards and specific packages that you guys can go to your other Limited podcasts for. I'm sure they'll have some good content on it in the coming weeks as stuff comes out and people are playing on Arena. We don't have time to get into it here, but we've been enjoying it. So
wow, it's been an hour.
It has been,
We should probably wrap up.
That is what I was doing, in fact. So, that is everything we have learned, hope to execute on this weekend in Team Sealed.
So far.
Yes, although that's what everyone's getting, is just that. There's nothing else that they're getting. And we hope to see people there. Feel free to come up, say hi, and I guess go out and make some good plays, unless you're playing against us, in which case, please punt horribly.
Yeah!
See you guys next time.
I love Team Sealed.
Love Team
Bye.
Sealed.
Subscribe to this one's Patreon.